Hi, Mrs. Laporte and Mrs. Luker's kindergarten class. I was so happy to see the email from Mrs. Laporte asking me a whole bunch of questions, and I am so excited that I get to try and answer some questions. So the first question I saw was that you guys were doing an experiment all about how to make it so that the apple doesn't go brown after you cut it. And I heard that you did all sorts of cool things to be able to see if you could make the apple not go brown. But then I also heard that the apples that you didn't put anything on still didn't go brown either. So I was pretty impressed, because when you cut an apple open, see, this is a nice Empire apple, and when you cut an apple open, so I'm going to do it right now with my trusty little knife here. When you cut an apple open like that, all the enzymes inside there, I just went through the peel of the apple and I cut it open, and now the enzymes are exposed. And when those enzymes meet the air, they don't like it very much, so they normally go brown. So I was surprised to hear that your apples didn't go brown. So now I'm worried, because maybe you don't have any oxygen in your classroom, because that really should have turned brown. So I'm worried for you. Hopefully you can breathe in your classroom, and hopefully there's some oxygen there. But I'm going to do the same experiment, because sometimes when people do experiments, to make sure the experiment really works, is if somebody else can do the experiment and get the same results. So we'll see. I'm going to leave this apple right here where you can see it right like that. I'm going to leave that apple there, and we're going to try and see if that apple goes brown. Okay? And in the meantime, I'm going to eat this part because I really like apples. Okay, we'll watch and see. Well, no, we won't watch. Let's go answer some more questions, and then we'll come back and see if this is still brown, or if this turns brown, okay? Okay, see you soon. So Avery asked the question, why do the apples fall off of the trees? And that was a really good question. So I had to really think about that one. So you know how right now the leaves are falling off of the trees? When you go outside and you see all the leaves coming down and they're all over the ground and stuff. Well, apples are kind of the same way. When they get really ripe, they fall down to the ground. Except sometimes, like these Honeycrisp right behind me. Have you heard of the variety Honeycrisp? Everybody raise your hand if you've heard of Honeycrisp before, okay? So Honeycrisp sometimes like to hang on the tree for like a long time. See, the leaves have actually fallen off of these trees, but the apples are still there. They'll probably fall off in like January, because it takes a long time for them to fall off. They'll probably fall off in January, which is a long time. But in the meantime, if I want them to come off of the tree right now, because they're really ripe, these are like actually gross to eat right now. They're way too ripe. But if I grab a tree, let's see what happens. If I grab a tree and I try and shake it, let's see if the apples will come down. Ow! Oh God. Yeah, so if I just shake the tree, then the apples will fall off. So what's going to happen is, over the next little while, the workers on my farm, I'm going to get them to go to all of the apple trees where the apples are still hanging, and get them to fall, and get them to shake the trees to get the apples to fall off. Ouch, that hurt my head. But sometimes there are apples, and look, I'm going to walk over here, and you can see behind me, see all of the apples on the ground, and the leaves are still on the trees. So when we picked these apples off of these trees, we had to put some of them on the ground, because we would pick them and then we would look at it and we would say, oh, there's a spot on that. And that spot, that means that that spot won't make it to the grocery store. So I don't have anywhere to put that apple, because they won't buy it from us at the grocery store. So I have to put it on the ground, because I can't put it back on the tree. So I hope that answers your question, Avery. So Kaylee asked the question, why are some apples sweet and some apples are sour? And that was a good question too, and that really got my brain to start thinking, why are some sweet and some sour? Well, you know what, Kaylee? It's just because some people like sour apples and some people like sweet apples. And some apples grow red and some apples grow green. And that's just kind of how it works. It has everything to do with genetics. And it's the same thing as there's red grapes and green grapes, and there's really big oranges and little oranges, and that's just kind of how fruit and stuff works, is that there's different flavors for different folks. So maybe some of you like sour apples, maybe some of you like green apples, maybe some of you like really red apples, and maybe some of you like really sweet apples, maybe some of you like really juicy apples, and maybe some of you don't like apples at all, and that's okay. So sometimes when we find an apple, let's see if I can show you to pick one. I'm going to pick this one. I go upside down like that. That's how I pick them here. And there, it's sort of red, isn't it? It's a little bit red. But this is a really sweet one because it's been hanging on the tree for a while. The longer they hang on the tree, the sweeter they are. These kind. This is called Empire. You probably have some in your snack program, I'm going to guess. So I'm going to take a bite and see if this one's sweet. Yeah, that's really sweet, very juicy. I would say too sweet. That's a bit too ripe. And they're not very hard anymore, and they're getting a bit soft because they're a little bit too ripe. I probably won't even take a second bite. So hopefully that answers the question about why some are sour and some are sweet. Well, it's still not brown. Maybe if I take off another piece to eat, maybe it'll get brown then. What do you think? Because it's really delicious and I can't not have any more apple. So I'm just going to take off. Oh, it's very juicy. I'm just going to take off another piece like that. And then I'm going to put it, whoopsie, now it won't stand up because I took too much off. Oh my. Okay, well, I'm just going to leave it like that. Now we'll keep an eye on it to see if it gets brown. Did you know that if you put lemon juice on it, that will make it so it doesn't get brown? Maybe you guys tried that one. I'm not sure which ones you guys tried. But you know what also works that you might not have guessed? Milk. I know, that sounds weird, doesn't it? Who wants to eat their apple with a milk? Oh, here comes a really big tractor. Hang on. I'm going to let him go past. He's a big guy. Yeah, nobody likes to eat their apples, like dip their apples in milk. That doesn't sound very tasty, but that prevents it from getting brown. Okay, I'm going to go and eat this piece, and I'll come back later and we'll see if this works. So Matt asked the question, how do we reach the apples at the tops of the trees? And you know what? We have some trees, let me show you. We have some trees that are super tall and way over our heads. So that's a really good question, Matt. Let me show you the magic that we have here. Can you see it right behind me? What is that? A ladder. That's right. And it goes way up to the tops of the trees. We have ladders just like this guy, and he's a very light and easy to move ladder. So everybody here has a ladder that they can take. And if we're in trees that are really tall, then some of the guys will stand on these ladders to be able to pick the apples. And that's how we reach the tops of those trees. And Ace asked, why don't we grow apples on the grass? And that's a good question too. But let me show you something. Here is a piece of grass right here. See that? See? And see how flimsy it is? It bends really easily. It's pretty light. It's not very strong, a piece of grass, is it? Now, what do you think would happen if I were to put an apple on the top of this piece of grass? What do you think? Think it would maybe go down like that? Yeah, maybe. Let me show you something about my apple trees. See this guy right here? He's a big, tall, strong apple tree. And he's really big and dense, and it's hard for me to move him. And he's got a lot of girth around here. He's a fairly big apple tree, and he goes up pretty tall. Let's see. It goes up pretty tall too. In order to hold a whole bunch of apples, the tree has to be really strong, just like this. And that way they can hold up the apples because the apples are so heavy. Also, it takes a lot of energy to be growing an apple. So the apple trees send a lot of their food and water through the trunk of their tree to feed the apples, to make the apples get bigger, because the apples start off when they're itty bitty little babies, and they grow and they grow and they grow and they grow and they get really big. But in order to feed them some food and water, the trunk of the tree has to be a fairly big size. Also, These trees are pretty tall and they get really heavy on top. And I'll try and find some pictures to share with you about how heavy our trees can get with apples. So sometimes, if you can see, let me see if I can go around. Sometimes, see that big thing there? I have to have a pole that holds the tree up. And that'll keep it going straight, and that'll keep it so that it doesn't fall over. And sometimes the tree grows around. You can see there's the pipe up there, or the big pole, and the tree kind of grows around it. It kind of snakes around it as it grows up, because that pole is put there when the tree is very, very young. So that's why we need big, strong trees to be able to grow our apples, because that little flimsy piece of grass just won't hold them up. Hi guys. Well, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's getting a little brown. See? I'm getting a little bit of brown here and a little bit of brown in there, but it's also pretty windy, so maybe that's why it's getting brown. Maybe if you leave them out longer, they'll get brown. I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah, this one is definitely getting brown. So I should probably eat it before it gets brown, shouldn't I? Well, thanks so much, everybody, again for the email and all those questions, and I hope I answered them okay. And if you ever have questions again about farming, I would be more than happy to answer them, because I love to answer questions. All right? Hope you have a great day, and maybe I'll see you again. Bye, guys.